TypeError, response.data.items.map is not a function. That crash hit production after a 3-week silent schema change, all because of Z.any. Let's break down Zod Advanced Patterns 2026, Discriminated Unions, Recursion, and Production Validation, how it works, and the exact mistake behind that failure. Zod is a TypeScript-first schema declaration library that validates data at runtime. It solves the mismatch between compile-time types and runtime data, ensuring what you declare matches what arrives. Discriminated unions handle polymorphic data, a response that can be one of several shapes. Zod's z.discriminatedUnion reads the discriminator first and evaluates only the matching branch, making it faster and safer than z.union. Here we define 3 payment variants, each with a literal discriminator. The discriminated union validates the type field first, then only the matching branch. After validation, TypeScript narrows the type automatically, giving us full safety in the switch. Recursive data structures like comment threads need self-referencing schemas. Z.lazy wraps the self-reference in a function, but without a depth limit, a malicious payload can cause a stack overflow. We define a comment base and extend it with a lazy self-reference for children. The superfine checks depth and adds an issue if it exceeds 10 levels. This prevents stack overflow from deeply nested payloads. Zod 4 separates 3 stages: coerce input, validate shape, transform output. Use zcoerce for primitives, zpreprocess for complex parsing, transform for reshaping, and pipe to revalidate the transformed result. Here we coerce page and limit from strings to numbers, pipe a data time string through coerce and validation, and transform an event to add computed fields. The API user schema flattens a nested API response into a simpler shape. Production codebases have hundreds of schemas. Define base schemas once and compose with extend, pick, omit, and partial. Zod 4 adds brand for nominal types, preventing ID mixing. We define a branded userid type, a base user, then extend it for profile, pick for public API, and partial for patch updates. This eliminates duplication and keeps schemas consistent. Built-in validators cover types, but business rules need custom refinements. Use refine for single checks and superrefine for multiple errors. Async refinements like database uniqueness checks require parseAsync. Here we use superrefine to check password strength and email uniqueness. The register schema also uses a simple refine to ensure passwords match. Async refinements require parseAsync when parsing. Zod 4 makes error handling user-friendly. Define per field errors inline, use Z, config for global messages, and flatten for one-line form integration. We set global custom errors, define per field errors inline, and use flatten to get a field-to-message map perfect for React hook form. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. The API provider changed the response from an array to a paginated wrapper. The Z.any schema accepted both shapes without error, so validation passed. But the React component expected an array, causing a crash when it tried to call map on undefined. Using Z.any for a field that should be an array allowed a paginated wrapper object to pass validation, silently accepting an API change for 3 weeks. The fix replaced Z.any with a strict schema using z.discriminatedUnion to handle both the old and new response shapes. A schema version check was added to detect future changes. Now validation catches shape mismatches immediately. Transform runs after validation, so chaining min after transform will fail because the value is already a number. Use pipe to validate the transformed output. Z.any accepts any value without validation, disabling all safety. It gives false confidence. Always use explicit schemas for external data. z.union tries every branch in order, which is slower and produces confusing error messages when multiple branches fail. Always use z.discriminatedUnion when you have a shared discriminator field. Without a depth guard, a malicious payload with 10,000 levels causes a range error. Always add a superrefine with maxDepth to recursive schemas. Duplicating fields across 20 schemas is a maintenance trap. If the email validation changes, you have to update it everywhere. Extract common fields into a base schema and compose. In Zod 4, brand is a method on Zod type that returns a branded type. The syntax shown in the article z string UUID, brand user ID, is correct for Zod 4. However, in Zod 3, branding is achieved via z-branded or a custom branded type. Ensure your project uses Zod 4, released 2025, to use this syntax. The article mentions pipe, but doesn't show a full example. Here's a concrete pattern. Coerce a string to a number, validate it's positive, then transform it to a formatted string. This demonstrates the three-stage pipeline in Zod 4. The article shows async refinements but doesn't emphasize that you must use parseAsync or safe parseAsync to trigger them. Using parse with an async refinement will throw a runtime error because the refinement returns a promise. Always use the async parse method when your schema contains async refinements. To debug validation issues, use safe parse and flatten the errors. Grep for Z.any and pass through in your schemas. For recursive schemas, verify zlazy is used. For transforms, log the parsed output. Let's run through some common interview questions. Difference between z.union and z.discriminatedUnion. Union tries sequentially. Discriminated union reads discriminator first, 01. How does zlazy work and what risk? Lazy wraps reference called it validation. Risk, unbounded recursion, add maxDepth refine versus superrefine. Refine single predicate, superrefine multiple CTX, add issue calls. And a few frequently asked questions. Should I validate database results with Zod? Yes, parse every DB result at the data access layer. Difference between optional and nullable. Optional allows undefined, nullable allows null, nullish allows both. Is Zod used with TRPC? Yes, natively. Define input-output schemas for runtime validation and type inference. Let's recap the key takeaways. Discriminated unions equals 1 branch selection. Z-course right arrow validate, transform, right arrow pipe. Base schema plus compose eliminates duplication. Flatten, field errors for forms. Ready to go deeper? Up next, HTML basics for JavaScript developers, then CSS basics and box model, then CSS Flexbox complete guide, and CSS grid complete guide. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.